pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Today we're celebrating the deposit of a landmark map of extraordinary significance to the historical record of the United States and really to the cartography of the world. We gather to celebrate also the generosity and public spirit of the extraordinary person who made it possible. The map now housed in the vault in the Geography and Map Division, which we will unveil for you in a minute, has a title that hardly suggests the extent of its importance. The title, and hold your breath, I'll see if I can get it in one breath, A New and Correct Map of the United States of North America.
From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Today we're celebrating the deposit of a landmark map of extraordinary significance to the historical record of the United States and really to the cartography of the world. We gather to celebrate also the generosity and public spirit of the extraordinary person who made it possible. The map now housed in the vault in the Geography and Map Division, which we will unveil for you in a minute, has a title that hardly suggests the extent of its importance. The title, and hold your breath, I'll see if I can get it in one breath, A New and Correct Map of the United States of North America, laid down from the latest observations and best authorities agreeable to the Peace of 1783. It's by Abel Buell of New Haven, Connecticut, 1784. It's the first map of the United States compiled, printed, and published in America. It's the first map to be copyrighted in the United States. It's the most important retrospective map recently on the market that was not already in the Library of Congress or the National Archives or any other Washington institution, despite its being an absolutely fundamental document in the history of our nation. It's a major historic addition to the map collection here at the Library of Congress, which is the largest and the most widely comprehensive map collection in the world. But this really creates a trio of firsts. We have recently acquired the Waltzing-Miller map, upstairs, not too recently, but just a couple of years ago, the first map of the New World, the first map that suggested the world is round, and the first map, the first document of any kind to use the word America. And we also have the first map, the Drake map of the raid on St. Augustine, which is the first cartographic picture of anything that was now the United States of America. Now we have the first map ever printed in what became only 6 months before its printing for the first time the United States of America. Its sale at auction last month provided the very first opportunity to seek to acquire it for any collection, and particularly for the library. It's almost forgotten until the 1920s, when its primacy was finally recognized. The sale of Abel Buell's map at auction on December 3rd of last year created a great amount of enthusiasm among the cartographic community of historians, geographers, librarians, map dealers, map collectors. The map documents a unique time in our country's history, a period when the links between the former British colonies were very fragile. Buell's map appeared just 6 months after the Treaty of Paris was signed, ending the Revolutionary War. It would be several years more before the terms of the U.S. Constitution were negotiated, written, and approved by all of the 13 states. Now, under the Articles of the Confederation, then prevailing, the formal agreement, which initially united the states, of course, changing their status from colonies to individual states, each state retained sovereignty over all government functions that were not specifically relinquished to the very brand new national government. And this kinds of issue, of course, continues to resonate today in political discussions as to what governance is appropriately within the purview of the federal government and what aspects should be carried out by the states. Now, the map illustrates, for instance, Connecticut's retention of rights, most of which were later transferred to the centralized federal government, including the establishment of internal boundaries between the former colonies and the surrender of Western land claims. Buell, who's a native of Connecticut, showed his state extending all the way to the Mississippi River. And this was not an exception, as you will see. Anyhow, this exceptionally rare map is known in only 7 copies, all of which have been in libraries or archives for at least a century. Philip Lee Phillips, the world-renowned expert on the history of American cartography, who established priorities for building the cartographic collections of the Library of Congress, even he was not aware of its identity as the first national map until 1924. By then, the map was unobtainable. The Library of Congress does not acquire material simply because of its scarcity. Each item purchased must be either a missing link in the knowledge and documents of our history or is needed to further build on the great strengths of our rich holdings. When I sign for an acquisition for the Library of Congress, I do not sign for the Library of Congress. I sign for the United States of America. First time I did this, I was a little awed. I still am. But that is, in a sense, our national charter as the oldest federal cultural institution. The National Library, which is, of course, Congress's own library, collects material to illustrate the creativity of the American people, since we are also the copyright deposit of the United States, and to increase our knowledge of the past, present, and future. Until now, the Library of Congress has had available for the use of scholars only black and white photocopies of this great map that were made using the primitive technology of the 1930s. Now, today, this extraordinary library, through the enormous generosity and public spirit of David Rubenstein, has this culturally invaluable item on deposit to display side by side, as it shortly will be, with the rest of its key world-class cartographic collections. It takes its place beside the Walter Miller map, as I mentioned it, which is as indeed the second most expensive map ever sold at auction. Abel Buell's map is the first cartographic visualization of a brand new United States of America. It will be on exhibit in the Jefferson Building upstairs, inventorying the, it will be, in effect, rounding out, as I said, these historic firsts. This really is the first United States map. And it's a great tribute to the generosity, the vision, and the extraordinary philanthropy to our cultural institutions generally, and most especially, of course, also here to the Library of Congress. And he's made possible our ability to think forward about the National Book Festival as something for the next 5 years. And during this period, too, we'll be privileged to keep this on exhibit for the inspiration, the education, and the uplift that comes when seeing how your country came into being cartographically. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to present it after his words, after our words of thanks to him, which I extend now so very sincerely on the part of everybody here in the library and the many who will see it. It will exist just opposite the big exhibit we have on creating the United States, how it verbally came into being. With those primary documents, we now see how it cartographically came into being. And after his remarks, John A. Baer, the head of the Geography and Map section of the library and the 5.5 million map collection over which he presides, he will be here to answer questions for you, as will we all. So now let me present the benefactor, the man who's made it possible, Mr. David Burke.
Jim, thank you very much. I regard Jim as not as a librarian of Congress, but really as a librarian of the United States and librarian of the world. The job he's done here to expand the holdings of the Library of Congress is really extraordinary, and his enthusiasm for so many things like the National Book Festival and the kind of collections that the Library of Congress has is really inspirational to me. And when I learned of this opportunity, I never thought about putting it anywhere else, but here I have an agreement to have it here displayed for 5 years, but my real goal was to have it displayed here forever. And I think this is the appropriate place to have it displayed. The reason the map is so unusual is that the cartography wasn't all that well developed back in 1783, and the boundaries between the various states wasn't all that well defined. And so somebody who had to really define where the boundaries were had to do a lot of work, and the cartographer here really spent a lot of time trying to figure out what the boundaries were of each state, and this was the first time anybody really put something like that together after we won the Revolutionary War. This particular copy is probably the best of the 7 copies. There are 7 copies. 6 of them actually have a copyright mark on them. 1 of them does not. And of those 6 copies with copyright marks on them saying they're copyrighted, 3 of them do not reside in this country. 2 are in England and 1 is in Spain. So there are really only 3 copies that are copyrighted with the copyright mark of this map. One is in the one is at Yale, and one is the I believe it's the Historical Society of Connecticut. This one was owned by the New Jersey Historical Society, and the reason it owned it is that an ambassador from the United States was in France. He saw this, he bought it in about 1862 and sent it back to the New Jersey Historical Society. They didn't really know they had it for about 100 years. They discovered it about 100 years after they filed it away somewhere. And then I think in 1962, they revealed it for the first time. And therefore, it hasn't been worn out as many of the other maps had been, which are the same type as this, because it was basically for 100 years filed away. So it's in much better condition than the other 6 or 7 of these maps. My hope is that at the Library of Congress, so many people come here to look at maps and other things. Americans will see this and see this as a way to learn more about our country in the early years. And I always believe that when you learn more about your country in early years, it inspires you to learn more about your country. So my goal is to have people who come to the Library of Congress or people come to Washington want to come here, see this map, and maybe do a little bit more about learning about their country's history. And I think the more our people in this country learn about, and particularly young people learn about our country's history, the more I think we're better off. So I'm very happy and honored that it will be here. And Jim, I'm very delighted that you're the Librarian of Congress that is here while it is presented. And I'm very pleased that John knows so much about the maps and is going to oversee its curating and so forth. So please, join me in thanking Jim for his work and John for his work in getting this here. And I'd like to now, with Jim, show you what it looks like. Anticipation is always better than reality. It's actually pretty good. Usually count. Okay? Here's the count.
Yes, any questions or comments that, if not, you might want to take a few moments to enjoy the map. Besides all the comments about first, there's something else on here, and that is that this is the prime meridian on this map is Philadelphia. It's not London. And by that, it means that the person making the map is making a statement that of nationalism, that the map represents a national piece of the United States with Philadelphia. And later on, as you know, as the capital moves down to Washington, Washington is the prime meridian on maps. That eventually is all resolved much later in the 19th century and all becomes Greenwich. But that's another important piece about this map. Also, the extraordinary boundaries that are on this map are worth looking at. So come on up, enjoy it. If you have questions, I'll be around to answer any of them. And I, too, want to echo a very thanks to Mr. Rubenstein. This is an incredible opportunity for us to share this with not only the nation, but with the people who come from all over the world to use our collection. So thank you very much.
This has been a presentation.
You can see the writing on the pavement. Young kids, they're growing up in basements. Online, a whole new generation. I'ma make mine, so you better go take it. Always, they need a new replacement. Decentralized, can't contain it. We're changing lives, yeah, upgrading. Call it suicide of the older generation.
What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. Oh, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling them wrong. You got me like, oh, yeah, I think that we've all had enough. Sick of dealing with the old plan. They know that we're calling them wrong.
Hey, it's too late to try to go contain it. A generation fueled by creation. We live lives on a small screen nation. We control the airwaves, no negotiation. I refuse to think we need saving. Something good will come from creation. And when we think that the world is too anxious, we'll adapt, evolve, survive, and save it.
What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah. I think that we've all had enough. What keeps you up at night, yeah? Make all the demons quiet, yeah. We were built to thrive, yeah.